Imagine this. You are a 16-year-old boy standing in the shadows of Rome's bustling marketplace in the year 66 after Christ. Your name isn't even Sporus yet. That cruel mockery will come later. Right now, you're just another face in the crowd, beautiful enough to turn heads, but young enough to still believe the world holds possibilities beyond survival. The morning sun catches your delicate features, your smooth skin untouched by the brutal realities that await. You have no idea that across the forum, behind heavy curtains in his imperial litter, the most powerful man in the world has just spotted you. His breath catches in his throat. Your face, your perfect oval face with those full lips and soft eyes, belongs to someone else. Someone dead, someone he murdered. What you don't know is that Emperor Nero, Claudius Caesar, Augustus Germanicus, is about to destroy everything you are to create a grotesque monument to his own guilt. The boy you are today will cease to exist. In his place will rise something unprecedented in human history, a mutilated shadow forced to wear the identity of a dead empress. This isn't just a story about one boy's suffering. This is about how absolute power transforms love into torture and grief into abomination. Before we dive into this forgotten nightmare of survival and suffering, if you're fascinated by the darkest truths hidden in history's shadows, hit that subscribe button to join us as we uncover the stories they tried to bury. These voices from the past deserve to be heard, and there are countless more waiting to be told. Comment below to let me know where you're watching from as we explore these buried testimonies together. The dead woman haunting Nero's fevered mind was Poppaea Sabina, and her ghost walks through every moment of what's about to happen to you. She had been the most beautiful woman in Rome, a calculating seductress who clawed her way from provincial obscurity to the imperial throne. Born in Pompeii in 30 after Christ, Poppaea learned early that beauty was currency and manipulation was survival. She was first married to Rufius Crispinus, then seduced Marcus Salvius Otho before setting her sights on the ultimate prize, Nero himself. When Poppaea wanted something, she got it. When she wanted Nero to divorce his wife, Claudia Octavia, the emperor's stepsister disappeared into exile and execution. When she wanted Nero's mother Agrippina eliminated, the Empress Dowager found herself murdered by her own son's assassins. Poppaea didn't just influence Nero, she rewrote the very fabric of the imperial family to suit her ambitions. But her greatest weapon was also her weakness. That face, that perfect face that launched wars and toppled empires, would ultimately seal both her fate and yours. The end came on a night in 65 after Christ that would echo through the corridors of power for generations. Nero had spent the day at the races, his true passion, while Poppaea waited in their palatial chambers, heavy with their second child. She was past her prime now, approaching 35 in a world where women were considered ancient by 40. The pregnancy had changed her body, and she could feel Nero's attention wandering to younger, firmer flesh. When he finally stumbled home, drunk on wine and victory, Poppaea made a fatal mistake. She complained. You can imagine her voice rising in their marble bedchamber, her words cutting through the night air like daggers. How long had she waited? How many hours spent staring at empty doorways while her husband cavorted with charioteers and actors? The argument escalated, voices echoing off cold stone walls, until something inside Nero snapped. His foot connected with her swollen belly once, twice, with the fury of a man who had never learned the word no. When sanity returned, Nero was staring at two corpses, his wife and his unborn child, their blood pooling on the floor that had witnessed the rise and fall of dynasties. But here's what makes this story truly twisted. Nero didn't just mourn Poppaea, he deified her. He declared her a goddess, built temples in her honor, and spent the treasury of the world's greatest empire on her funeral. He had her body embalmed rather than cremated, preserving that face that had launched 1,000 ships and 1,000,000 nightmares. Yet, even as he proclaimed her divine, even as he wept crocodile tears over her golden sarcophagus, his eyes were already searching for her replacement. Not a new wife, not a different woman, but her, the same face, the same eyes, the same cruel perfection that had driven him to murder in the first place. This is where your nightmare begins. You're standing in that marketplace, completely unaware that your bone structure has just condemned you to become the plaything of a madman. Nero's scouts are everywhere, his agents trolling through the crowds looking for boys with the right cheekbones, the right curve to their lips, the right tilt to their heads. When they spot you, when they see Poppæa's ghost staring back at them through your innocent eyes, your fate is sealed faster than you can scream. The name they'll give you, Sporus, comes from the Greek word for seed. It's Nero's idea of a joke. After what he's about to do to you, you'll never plant any seeds of your own. You'll be nothing but a hollow echo of someone else's memory, a walking monument to imperial guilt, dressed in silk and crowned with shame. The irony cuts deeper than any blade. The woman whose face you wear rose to power through her sexuality. You're about to discover that same face will rob you of yours forever. The first time Nero sees you, really sees you, the world holds its breath. It's not love that flickers in his eyes, it's recognition. The dead have returned, and you're about to become her vessel whether you consent or not. The emperor doesn't ask permission. He doesn't negotiate. He simply points, and his Praetorian guards move like sharks through the crowd. Your last moments of freedom evaporate in the time it takes for bronze-armored hands to close around your arms and drag you toward the waiting litter. Think modern kidnapping is terrifying. At least today's victims might hope for rescue, ransom, or escape. You're being abducted by the law itself, stolen by the man who owns not just your body, but your very right to exist. The guards don't even bother to be gentle. Why should they? You're not a person anymore, you're imperial property, a raw material to be shaped according to Nero's twisted specifications. As the litter curtains close behind you, as the marble palaces of the Palatine Hill rise around you like the walls of a tomb, you begin to understand that your old life has ended. What's about to begin will make you wish you had died with it. The procedure that will unmake you as a man happens in the palace's private medical chambers, surrounded by the empire's finest surgeons and Nero's most trusted advisors. This isn't a back-alley butcher shop. This is state-sponsored mutilation performed with all the clinical precision Roman medicine can provide. But precision doesn't equal mercy. The castration of a young man in first-century Rome was an art form practiced on thousands of boys across the empire, each one screaming his way into a new category of existence. You're held down on a marble table while learned physicians debate the best method for your transformation. Should they crush your testicles with bronze instruments, the favored technique for preserving some sexual function while eliminating fertility, or should they opt for complete removal, the method that produces the smoothest, most feminine results? Nero watches from his ivory chair, his eyes never leaving your face as he searches for traces of Poppæa in your expression of terror. The pain is beyond description, beyond human endurance, yet you endure it because you have no choice. Roman medicine provides opium for the procedure, but not enough to eliminate the agony entirely. They want you conscious, want you to understand what's being taken from you and why. As the bronze blades do their work, as your screams echo off the painted walls depicting gods and heroes, Nero leans forward and whispers in your ear, "You are no longer yourself. You are Poppæa Sabina reborn. You will be his empress, his wife, His greatest love returned from the grave. The recovery process becomes a grotesque education in imperial power. While your wounds heal, while your body adapts to its new reality, teams of servants transform you into something that never existed before. Your hair is styled in Poppaea's elaborate coiffures, held in place with golden pins that once adorned her corpse. Your skin is painted with cosmetics ground from pearls and precious stones, the same formulations that once enhanced her legendary beauty. They dress you in her actual clothes, silks and stolas, still scented with the perfumes she wore to her grave. But the physical transformation is only the beginning. You must learn to walk like her, talk like her, hold your head at the precise angle that made men write poetry about her profile. Former servants who attended the real Poppaea become your unwilling tutors, teaching you her gestures, her mannerisms, her way of tilting her head when she laughed. They weep as they work. These women who loved their mistress, horrified at being forced to participate in this necromantic theater. The wedding ceremony that makes you Empress of Rome takes place in 67 after Christ, with all the pomp and pageantry typically reserved for actual marriages between actual people. You wear a traditional bridal veil, your mutilated body draped in imperial purple, while senators and foreign dignitaries witness your transformation from boy to grotesque mockery of womanhood. The dowry Nero provides exceeds the treasuries of entire provinces. The wedding feast lasts for days, with entertainment provided by the empire's greatest artists and poets, composing verses about your beauty and grace. Yet every moment of this magnificent spectacle is underscored by a truth everyone knows, but no one dares speak. This is not a marriage. It's an elaborate suicide. You are not a bride, you're a living tombstone. Every time Nero calls you Poppaea, every time he dresses you in her jewelry and forces you to recreate her mannerisms, he's not honoring his dead wife, he's killing you a little more. Your identity disappears piece by piece, buried beneath layers of silk and lies until you become a stranger to yourself. The sexual dynamics of your relationship with Nero reveal the true horror of Roman power structures. In a society obsessed with dominance and submission, you occupy the lowest possible rung. You're not just passive, you're neutered. Not just feminine, you're artificially feminized. Not just a sexual object, you're a sexual impossibility. A boy forced to play a woman playing a role in a dead emperor's psychotic fantasy. Nero doesn't make love to you. He performs elaborate rituals of possession, each encounter a reminder that you exist solely for his pleasure and his pain. Roman sexuality was never about love or even lust. It was about power. Who penetrated whom, who commanded and who obeyed, who stood and who knelt. In this hierarchy, you represent the ultimate conquest, not just a body claimed, but an entire identity erased and rewritten. When Nero forces himself on you, when he whispers Poppaea's name in your ear and pretends you're his beloved returned from death, he's not seeking intimacy. He's performing a kind of necromancy that uses your flesh as the medium. The public appearances you are forced to make as Nero's empress become exercises in mass psychological manipulation. You appear at state functions dressed in regalia that cost more than most citizens see in a lifetime. Your beauty enhanced by cosmetics and jewelry that make you shine like a goddess. The crowds cheer, the senators applaud, and foreign ambassadors marvel at the emperor's exotic bride. But they're not seeing you, they're seeing what Nero wants them to see. Proof that death itself bows to imperial will, that even the grave surrenders its treasures to Caesar's desires. These performances take a toll that goes beyond physical exhaustion. Every public appearance requires you to suppress your identity more completely, to become more thoroughly the ghost you're impersonating. You must smile when you want to scream, must graciously accept compliments on beauty that isn't yours, must play the devoted wife to the man who destroyed everything you once were. The psychological fracturing that results from this constant performance creates a kind of living dissociation, a survival mechanism that splits your consciousness between the boy you were and the specter you've become. But you're not Nero's only victim in this sick fantasy. He also married a freedman named Pythagoras, forcing the man to play the role of husband while Nero acted as wife. These twisted arrangements reveal the emperor's complete disconnect from reality, his belief that human relationships could be rewritten like stage plays to satisfy his emotional needs. You and Pythagoras become players in an elaborate theater of delusion, forced to participate in Nero's psychological breakdown while maintaining the fiction that this represents normal imperial behavior. The ring you give Nero during the Kalends festival of 68 after Christ becomes a moment of subtle rebellion, disguised as a gift. The gemstone depicts the rape of Proserpina, the mythological tale of a young maiden dragged into the underworld to become Hades' unwilling bride. Everyone at court understands the symbolism immediately. You're not just giving the emperor jewelry, you're holding up a mirror to his crimes, showing him exactly what he's done to you, wrapped in the language of classical mythology. Nero accepts the ring with delight, completely missing or choosing to ignore its darker implications. To him, it's just another pretty bauble, another sign of your devotion to his fantasies. But court observers recognize it as one of many omens predicting the emperor's fall. When the most abused victim in the palace starts giving gifts that metaphorically depict kidnapping and rape, even the most obsequious courtiers begin to sense that something fundamental has shifted in the balance of power. The collapse comes swiftly when it finally arrives. Military rebellion sweeps across the empire as Nero's excesses finally push Rome beyond its tolerance for imperial madness. You're with him during those final desperate weeks, one of only 4 companions brave or foolish enough to stay by his side as the world closes in around him. When the Praetorian Guard abandons him, when the Senate declares him an enemy of the state, when even his most loyal servants begin to desert, you remain. Not out of love, not out of loyalty, but because you have nowhere else to go. You are Nero's creation, and without him, you're nothing but a mutilated boy with no identity and no future. The final scene plays out in a suburban villa where Nero attempts to compose himself for suicide. The emperor who once commanded legions and conquered nations now begs you to help him find the courage to die. But you refuse. After everything he's done to you, after all the ways he's destroyed and remade you according to his twisted specifications, you will not grant him the mercy of assistance in death. He dies badly, stabbed in the neck by a freedman while whimpering about the loss of such a great artist. His last words are not apologies for his crimes, but lamentations for his unfinished artistic projects. Your post-Nero existence becomes a carousel of imperial predators, each one eager to claim the famous castrated boy as a trophy. Nymphidius Sabinus, the Praetorian prefect who helped orchestrate Nero's downfall, immediately claims you as his consort. He calls you Poppaea, just as Nero did, continuing the sick fantasy that you're somehow the reincarnation of the dead Empress. When Sabinus is killed by his own troops, you're passed to the next emperor like a piece of furniture, a living reminder of the previous regime's decadence. Otho, who becomes emperor in 69 after Christ, had once been married to the real Poppaea before Nero stole her away. Your relationship with him takes on even more twisted dimensions as he tries to reclaim his lost love through your mutilated body. The irony is suffocating. You're being used to recreate a relationship that ended when your face's original owner was murdered by her imperial husband. Otho's reign lasts only 3 months before he loses a civil war and commits suicide, leaving you to face yet another transition to yet another master. Vitellius, the victor in Rome's year of 4 emperors, has plans for you that make all previous humiliations pale in comparison. Rather than keeping you as a private consort, he announces that you'll be starring in a gladiatorial spectacle, a public reenactment of the rape of Proserpina for the entertainment of the Roman masses. The performance will be fatal, of course. You'll be thrown to wild beasts after being sexually assaulted in front of thousands of cheering spectators. Your death designed to symbolically purge Rome of Nero's corrupted legacy. The announcement of your impending spectacle becomes the breaking point that your spirit somehow survived years of imperial abuse could not withstand. You've endured castration, forced feminization, sexual slavery, and public humiliation. You've been passed between emperors like a party favor, your identity erased and rewritten so many times that you've forgotten who you were before this nightmare began. But the prospect of being raped and murdered for entertainment in front of Rome's bloodthirsty mob finally pushes you beyond endurance. Your suicide, when it comes, represents the first and last act of true agency you've been able to exercise since Nero's agents dragged you from that marketplace. You choose death on your own terms rather than accept one more degradation, one final humiliation performed for the pleasure of strangers. The method isn't recorded, but the motivation is clear. After years of having every choice taken from you, you finally make one that no one can override or corrupt. You die at roughly 20 years old, though the exact age is unclear since no one bothered to record the birthday of a slave boy who became an imperial plaything. Your death barely registers in the historical record, a footnote to the chaos of civil war and the fall of dynasties. Yet your story encapsulates something profound about the nature of absolute power and its corrupting influence on both perpetrator and victim. The tragedy of your existence lies not just in what was done to you, but in what you were forced to become. You weren't just physically mutilated, you were psychologically erased, transformed from a person into a symbol, from a boy into a grotesque monument to imperial guilt. Every day of your adult life was spent impersonating a dead woman, channeling the ghost of someone else's memories while your own identity slowly dissolved in a solution of silk and suffering. Your story reveals the true horror of Roman sexuality, which was never about pleasure but about dominance. In a society where sexual roles were determined by power rather than desire, you occupied the lowest possible position. Not just passive, but artificially feminized. Not just submissive, but literally neutered. You were the ultimate expression of Roman sexual politics. A person transformed into an object. A boy remade into a living doll for imperial pleasure. The psychological damage inflicted by your transformation extends beyond individual trauma to reveal something darker about human nature itself. Nero didn't just want to replace Poppaea. He wanted to conquer death itself through your violation. By forcing you to become her, he was attempting to rewrite reality according to his emotional needs, to make the dead live again through the suffering of the living. Your body became the battlefield where his war against mortality was fought, and your sanity was the price paid for his delusions of godhood. Yet, there's something profoundly human in your final act of defiance. After years of having every choice stripped away, after being transformed into someone else's idea of who you should be, you reclaimed the most fundamental human right, the right to determine your own ending. Your suicide wasn't just escape, it was rebellion, a final assertion of self in a life that had been devoted to the service of others' fantasies. The historical sources that preserve your story, mainly Suetonius and Cassius Dio, use your suffering as evidence of Nero's depravity and madness. To them, you are not a person, but a symptom, a sign of how far imperial power had strayed from traditional Roman values. They're horrified not by your pain, but by what your existence represents about the corruption of their society. Even in death, you remain instrumental, a tool for historians to make larger points about political decay and moral decline. Modern readers might find some comfort in the fact that Nero's dynasty died with him, that the system which created your nightmare collapsed within a year of your death. But this misses the larger point. Your story isn't unique to Rome or to ancient history. Wherever absolute power concentrates in the hands of individuals accountable to no one, wherever human beings are treated as disposable objects for the pleasure of their superiors, your tragedy repeats itself in new forms. The boy who never got to grow up, who never got to discover who he might have become if imperial madness hadn't claimed him, stands as testimony to the price of unchecked power. Your name, Sporus, has echoed through literature and art for 2,000 years, but always as a symbol rather than a person. Alexander Pope famously asked, "Who breaks a butterfly upon a wheel?" But he was using your suffering as a metaphor for his own literary arguments rather than honoring your humanity. Perhaps the most tragic aspect of your legacy is how little we actually know about you as an individual. Your thoughts, your feelings, your dreams and fears are lost to history. We know how you died, but not how you lived inside your own mind during those years of enforced performance. Did you ever believe you had become Poppaea, or did you always remain aware of the fiction you were forced to inhabit? Did you find moments of genuine peace amid the horror, or was every second a reminder of what had been stolen from you? What we do know is that you survived longer than anyone had a right to expect. In a world where the average life expectancy was less than 30 years, where violence was commonplace and justice non-existent for those without power, you endured 4 years of the most extreme psychological and physical abuse imaginable. You navigated the treacherous waters of imperial politics while maintaining your sanity well enough to choose your own death when the alternative became unbearable. Your story serves as a reminder that behind every act of political oppression, every abuse of institutional power, stands an individual human being whose suffering is real and irreplaceable. You weren't just collateral damage in Nero's psychotic breakdown. You were a person with your own inner life, your own capacity for joy and sorrow, your own unrealized potential. The empire that destroyed you has been dust for 15 centuries, but the boy whose face reminded a mad emperor of his dead wife deserves to be remembered not as a curiosity or a symbol, but as a fellow human being whose pain still echoes across the centuries. The palace where you were mutilated is ruins now. The amphitheater where you were meant to die for entertainment still stands, a monument to human cruelty disguised as architecture. But you, the boy whose only crime was bearing the wrong face at the wrong time, exist now only in the words of historians who saw you as evidence rather than as a person. Your grave is unmarked, your bones scattered, your memory preserved only in accounts written by men who viewed your suffering as proof of someone else's villainy. Yet in choosing to end your own story, in refusing to become one final spectacle for Roman entertainment, you achieved something that eluded Nero for all his power and Poppaea for all her beauty. You wrote your own ending. In a life defined by others' choices about who you should be and what you should suffer, your final act was entirely your own. The boy who had been remade into an empress, who had been transformed from a person into a symbol, ultimately chose person over symbol, individual agency over imposed identity. If this exploration into the darkest corners of imperial power has shown you truths you never knew existed, hit that subscribe button to continue this journey through history's buried voices. These stories matter not because they're shocking, but because they're human. Behind every act of historical cruelty stands a real person whose suffering deserves to be witnessed and remembered. Comment below if you found this story as haunting as I did, and let me know what other forgotten voices from history you want to hear. The boy named Sporus died at 20, but the questions his life raises are eternal. What happens when human beings are treated as objects? How do people survive when their very identity is stolen and rewritten? What does it mean to be human when your humanity is denied by those with power over you? These aren't just ancient questions, they echo through every era where power concentrates in the hands of those who see other people as disposable. Your story, tragic as it is, reminds us that resistance is possible even in the most hopeless circumstances. Even when every choice is taken away, the choice to remain fundamentally yourself, to refuse to become what others demand you become, survives in the deepest chambers of the human heart. You may have died wearing Papia's face, but you died as yourself, and in the end, that distinction made all the difference between victim and martyr, between object and person, between tragedy and triumph.